She tried to sue me for child support on a baby that wasn't mine. So I let her walk into her own trap. My wife was 3 weeks postpartum when I found the folder on her laptop labeled Family Budget. 2025, it wasn't a budget. It was a legal strategy document, custody percentages, alimony calculations. A list of my behavioral patterns that her lawyer wanted documented for court, a lawyer she'd been meeting with since month 6 of her pregnancy. With a baby that a DNA test, sitting in my glove box for 11 days, already told me wasn't mine. I want to get this out because I've been sitting on it for 3 months, and I still shake a little when I think about how close she came to pulling it off. So bear with me. I need to tell this whole thing in order or it won't make sense why I did what I did. My name doesn't matter, call me Ryan. This is everything that happened between the day my wife told me she was pregnant and the day I watched her attorney's face go gray in a courtroom in front of a judge who did not appreciate being lied to. I married Danielle 6 years ago. We met in our mid-20s, dated for 2 years, got married in a barn venue outside Asheville that cost more than my car. On paper, we were the couple everyone said made sense. I ran a small commercial landscaping business I'd built from nothing, 3 trucks, a crew of 9, decent money. The kind of stable but unglamorous income that doesn't turn heads, but pays a mortgage. Danielle worked as an account manager at a marketing firm downtown, the kind of job with a lot of after-work drinks with the team. For the first 4 years, things were normal. Not perfect, we fought about money sometimes, about how much I worked, about her mother inserting herself into everything, but normal. The kind of marriage you don't examine too closely because examining it feels unnecessary. Then, last spring, Danielle got a promotion. New department, new office, new team. And a new manager named Colin who she mentioned constantly. Colin thought this. Colin said that. Colin's so good at his job, babe, you should see how he runs a meeting. I didn't think much of it at first. I trusted her. That's not a naive thing to say. 6 years of marriage, no history of either of us cheating, a business and a life we'd built together. Trust wasn't stupidity, it was just where we were. Then in August, she told me she was pregnant. I remember exactly where we were standing. The kitchen, she was leaning against the counter holding the test like it was a fragile bird, and she started crying. And I picked her up and spun her around like an idiot, because we'd been trying, quietly, for almost a year. I was happy, I want to be honest about that. Whatever came after, that moment was real to me. But here's the thing that I didn't clock at the time, and that I only understood months later when I went back through my memory frame by frame like a detective picking apart a crime scene. She did the math out loud that same night, about when the baby was due. April, then she got quiet for a second, just a second, and I thought it was pregnancy emotions. It wasn't. She was doing a different kind of math. The red flags didn't come all at once. They came like a slow leak, the kind you don't notice until the floor's already soft under your feet. First, it was her phone. She'd always been relaxed about it, left it on the counter, let me use it to look up directions, whatever. Around September, that changed. She started taking it into the bathroom. She started sleeping with it face down, charging on her nightstand instead of the kitchen counter like always. I asked her about it once, casually. You good? You seem stressed about work. She said Colin's team was going through a reorg and everyone was anxious about layoffs. Fine, reasonable. Then in October, my mother, who has never once been wrong about a bad feeling in 30 years of being my mother, sat me down after Thanksgiving dinner and said, Ryan. I don't like the way she looked at her phone tonight. I laughed it off. I told her Danielle was pregnant and hormonal and stressed about work, and that was that. But small things kept stacking. Danielle started going to prenatal yoga on Tuesday evenings that somehow always ran 2 hours long. She stopped wanting me to come to her OB appointments, said the office was small and awkward with partners in the room, which, fine, some women feel that way, I wasn't going to force it. Then in December, 4 months into the pregnancy, she came home from a team dinner, smelling like a cologne I didn't own and don't wear. With lipstick reapplied a little too perfectly for someone who'd supposedly been in a work meeting for 6 hours. I want to be clear, I still didn't jump to affair. I want you to understand how much I did not want to believe it, because believing it meant believing my marriage and the child growing inside my wife, might not be what I thought they were. So instead, I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself pregnant women get emotional, get distant, that this was a phase, that I needed to be supportive, not suspicious. Then in January, I picked her up from a girls' night because her car was in the shop. And when I pulled up outside the restaurant, I watched through the window as a man, tall, dark hair, maybe mid-30s, pulled her chair out for her like it was a date and put his hand on the small of her back as she stood up. That was Colin. I recognized him from her Instagram tags. I didn't say anything that night. I know how that sounds. But I needed proof before I blew up 6 years of marriage, and possibly my unborn child's stability on a gut feeling. So I did something I'm not proud of but don't regret. I ordered a paternity test kit designed for use after birth, and I quietly, carefully started keeping a folder of my own. Screenshots, dates, a log of team dinners, cross-referenced with her actual work calendar, which she'd forgotten was still shared with me from when I helped her set up her phone 2 years earlier. By the time she was 7 months along, I had 43 photos, call logs, and a pattern so obvious it made me sick to look at it. The baby, a girl, was born on April 11th. I was in that delivery room. I cut the cord. I held her 40 minutes after she was born, and I cried, because whatever I suspected, whatever ugly evidence sat in a folder on my phone, that tiny person in my arms hadn't done anything wrong. And for one night, I let myself just be a father. I got the DNA test done 11 days later. I want to walk you through exactly how, because people ask. I used a cheek swab kit, did it myself while giving her a bath, something new dads do all the time. Nobody thought twice about it, and mailed it to a lab under a P.O. box I'd rented specifically for this. 6 days after that, the results came back. 0% probability of paternity. I sat in my truck in a grocery store parking lot for 40 minutes. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I just sat there doing something close to math, working out, in a strange, cold, methodical way, what my life actually was now, versus what I thought it had been for the last 8 months. Here's where the story turns, though, and this is the part that still makes my hands shake a little when I tell it. 2 weeks after I got those results, before I'd said a single word to Danielle about any of it, I was looking for the printer paper in the hall closet and found a folder tucked behind a shoebox. Physical, printed pages, not digital. She'd been careful about her phone, but she'd underestimated how careful I'd need to be about paper. It was a full consultation packet from a family law attorney. Dated back to when she was 6 months pregnant, a full 3 months before the baby was even born. It laid out in bullet points a strategy. Petition for child support based on my income and business assets. Request spousal support citing reduced earning capacity during high-risk pregnancy. And this is the part that turned my stomach, a section labeled documenting pattern of controlling behavior. With a list of instances, her attorney wanted her to start writing down. Things like restricts access to shared finances and monitors her whereabouts, none of which were true, none of which had ever happened, but all of which, written down enough times by a woman crying in a lawyer's office, start to look like evidence. She hadn't just cheated. She'd been quietly building a legal case to take my business, my house, and years of my income for a child that had never been mine, and to paint me on paper as some controlling, manipulative husband to make sure a judge sided with her. I remember standing in that hallway holding those papers and understanding, really understanding for the first time, that I wasn't dealing with a woman who'd made a mistake and panicked. I was dealing with someone who had run numbers on my life like a business plan. So I made a decision that night that I still think was the right one, even though it wasn't the honest, confront her immediately choice a lot of people would have made. I said nothing. Instead, I hired my own attorney, quietly, using a different bank account she didn't know I had. One I'd kept from before we got married for exactly this kind of just in case, and I handed over everything. The DNA test, the photos, the calendar logs, the consultation packet, photographed page by page and put back exactly where I found it. My attorney's first words to me were, "Ryan, she's not just going to lose, she's going to wish she'd never opened this folder." 3 weeks later, Danielle filed. Exactly like the papers said, she would petition for child support, spousal support, and a request that I pay her attorney's fees, citing financial control during the marriage. She had no idea I already knew everything. I remember the day the papers were formally served to me. She actually looked nervous handing them over, like some small part of her knew this was ugly. But she still had that flicker of confidence, the look of someone who thinks they've already won because the other person doesn't know the game is being played. I signed for the papers, looked at her and said, "Okay, just that, just okay." I think that unsettled her more than yelling would have. My attorney filed our response 2 weeks later, and it wasn't a denial. It was a countermove. We requested a paternity test be entered into the court record, mine, already completed and lab certified, alongside a motion to dismiss the support claims on the grounds that the child was not biologically mine, and a formal fraud claim. Given that she had solicited legal strategy documents while knowingly withholding the paternity question from both me and, evidently, her own attorney. Because here's the twist that I didn't even plan, I just uncovered it. Her lawyer hadn't known the baby wasn't mine either. Danielle had walked into that office 8 months pregnant and told her own attorney flatly that I was the father. She built an entire legal strategy to extract money and assets from me under a lie. She told her own legal team. When that came out in the pretrial filings, her attorney requested an emergency withdrawal from the case. In the filing, which became part of the public record, he cited a material misrepresentation of fact by the client that fundamentally compromises the integrity of this representation. In plain English, she lied to her own lawyer, and he wanted nothing to do with what came next. She had to find new counsel 3 weeks before the hearing. The new attorney, from what I understand, took one look at the file and told her settling quietly, immediately, and asking for nothing was her best option. She didn't take that advice. I think by that point pride had taken over from strategy. The hearing happened on a Tuesday in July. I wore a plain gray suit. My attorney was calm, almost bored-sounding, the way people are when they know exactly how something ends. Danielle's new attorney tried to argue that regardless of paternity, I had assumed a parental role in the child's early weeks and should bear some financial responsibility, a real legal argument in some cases, and honestly the strongest card she had left. But then my attorney entered the consultation packet into evidence. All of it. The date stamp, 3 months before birth, the section on fabricating a pattern of controlling behavior, and the paternity test, cross-referenced with hospital records showing Danielle had, in fact, known Colin's paternity was possible because a nurse's note from a routine appointment in her second trimester, subpoenaed from the OBS office, documented Danielle privately asking about early paternity testing options without my knowledge. She had known, not suspected, known since at least month 5, and she moved forward with the lawsuit anyway. The judge did not hide his reaction. He said on the record that he found it deeply troubling that a legal strategy to extract spousal support had been built around allegations the petitioner knew to be false, and that the court did not look kindly on the use of family court as what he called a tool for financial extraction rather than a mechanism for justice. The support claims were dismissed entirely. Not reduced, dismissed. The court additionally ordered Danielle to cover my attorney's fees for the portion of litigation tied to the fraudulent claims, a detail that made my lawyer smile for the first time all day. But the part that really finished her, the part I didn't even ask for, was that the judge, given the documented pattern of fabricated allegations, referred the matter for review regarding whether the false, controlling behavior claims constituted an abuse of the court process. That's not a criminal conviction, but it is a formal black mark that follows a person, and combined with everything else, it meant Danielle walked out of that courtroom with nothing. A legal record that would follow her into any future filing, and a reputation in a fairly small professional community that does not stay quiet. Here's where the story gets its other layer, the one I didn't plan but that unfolded on its own. Colin, the coworker, the actual father, had been married the entire time. I hadn't known that until it came out during discovery. His wife found out everything at almost exactly the same time the court case became public record among people who knew us. She filed for divorce within the month, and by every account I've heard since, took him for a significant settlement of her own, since he'd apparently hidden a second affair on top of this one. Danielle's mother, who had been Team Danielle through the entire marriage, who had never liked me, read the court filing herself, because it became accessible through the county's public records. And by what I've heard through mutual family, was the one who told Danielle she couldn't stay with her, not after what you tried to do to that man, referring to me. Danielle moved into a one-bedroom apartment across town 3 weeks after the ruling. Her employer, the marketing firm, quietly let both her and Colin go within 2 months of each other, citing policy violations regarding workplace conduct, which I'm guessing had more to do with the public court filing landing in a small industries group chat than any actual HR policy. But I can't prove that, and honestly, I don't need to. As for the baby, I want to be careful here, because none of this is her fault, not one bit of it. Danielle retained full custody, as she should have, since the child isn't biologically mine and I never sought any parental claim. I have no anger toward that little girl. I hope genuinely that she has a good life. That part of this isn't a revenge story. It's just a fact that sits alongside everything else. 3 months later, I sold the house. Too many memories in the kitchen where she told me she was pregnant, honestly, and bought a smaller place outside the city with the crew I run every day. Business is good, better than good actually. A few of my longtime clients found out what happened because small towns talk, and if anything it's made people trust me more, not less. One of my crew guys said something that stuck with me. "Man, you handled that like you landscape, quiet, patient, and then it just looks inevitable." I heard secondhand. That Danielle reached out to a mutual friend a few weeks ago, asking if I'd be willing to talk things through. I didn't respond. There's nothing left to talk through. I gave that woman 8 months of genuine belief in a life we were building together, and she spent that same 8 months quietly building a case to take it from me for a child that was never mine. I don't feel triumphant exactly. I feel like someone who walked through a fire and is surprised to find himself still standing, still breathing, business intact, sanity intact. And for the first time in a long time, not sleeping with one eye open. If you take one thing from this story, let it be this: paper trails matter, quiet patience matters. And if someone's willing to lie to their own lawyer to hurt you, the truth, when it finally lands hard.